Today we're going to talk about my favorite character out of all the characters in the Pokemon franchise, so tell me your favorite as well. And we're also going to be trying to find out what happened to that character. So hey, I'm Not So Ace Trainer, welcome back to the channel, and what happened to Luker? Let's get into it. Luker is a character that was introduced in Pokemon Platinum as an officer of the International Police. This organization is basically the Interpol of Pokemon, a multi-regional organization that deals with crime, and was actually first introduced in the OG games, albeit translated to Global Police. But back to Luker, as I said, he was introduced in Pokemon Platinum and appeared many times during that game, always on Team Galactic's trail. In fact, it's because of this that he finds Karen's notes, and that's why we see him in the post-game when we find Karen ourselves at Stark Mountain. There, Luker is disguised as a breakable rock. This is one of his things, he's good at disguises. Unlike usual, where a character doesn't really show up again, this time we find Luker in black and white as well, tasked with capturing the 7 sages of Team Plasma after we deal with the trouble at Anne's castle. In fact, he is the one that tells us that Anne was seen in the distant land with a dragon Pokemon. In X and Y, we find him in the post-game, investigating the strange things happening in the dark alleys of Lumiose City in order to arrest Xerosic. This is where we also meet Emma and Mimi for the first time, and it's where they end up with the whole Luker Bureau building as a gift from Luker. Then, in Aurus, Luker is found in the battle resort suffering from amnesia. It is heavily implied that he fell from somewhere, considering how the game has different types of wormholes appearing, be them Hooper rings or dimensional rifts. It could have been from one of those, or it could have been a hint at the next game, Sun and Moon. There we find Luker again, not alone this time, but with Annabelle. The same Annabelle from Pokemon Emerald's Battle Tower, which is now a faller, someone that fell from an Ultra Wormhole. And she fell without her memories into a timeline where there's no Battle Tower, or at least there wasn't one when Aurus took place. Luker is there as a backup in their investigation on the Ultra Beasts, and in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, he also foreshadows the Team Rainbow Rocket storyline, and then at the end of our Ultra Beast quests, gives us a red card and just leaves. So, since his introduction in Gen 4, Luker has been in every generation up until Gen 7. So, of course, Luker would be in Gen 8 as well. I mean, he gave us a red card at the end of his Alolan adventure, and there's no better hint at him being in Galar than showing us a red card, something that is actually connected to football. You know, Galar, UK football, they love it. Of course, this is a great hint. But no, there was no Luker in Gen 8 and there was no Luker in Gen 9's main game, Scarlet and Violet. I fully expected him to be in Pokemon Legends ZA for obvious reasons. We would certainly meet Emma and she would be a big part of the main story. What better way to reintroduce this recurring character than by having him reunite with his former protege, now the big detective from Lumiose City, keeping the streets safe. But no, all we've got is a picture. That's it. Needless to say, I was disappointed. He would have been a great fit in Galar, being on the trail of the stolen Titanol from Alola, as he was there at the time, and just like he was investigating the Ultra Beast in Alola, he could have been investigating the Paradox Pokemon sightings in Paldea. But Game Freak made their decision, and I don't quite agree with it. But we have to assume that Luker was busy somehow. So, if he wasn't busy with stolen, genetically altered, man-made Pokemon, and he wasn't busy with timeline-bending events that brought strange-looking Pokemon from futuristic or prehistoric-looking timelines, and he didn't care about a potentially region-ending disaster happening in Lumiose City, then what was he doing? I think that for that, we have to go back to one moment of his life, when he fell. Luker fell in Hoenn during the events of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. If we assume that he fell from a Hooper ring, then we can assume that he was near Lumiose City, or at least near Ansha, very close to the events of the Mega Dimension DLC of Pokemon Legends ZA. But there's one problem, he has no memories. Hoopa rings don't appear to do this, as we're told on the Parkroom Palace of Kalos by one NPC that studies Hoopa that there's a tale about an organization that tried to manipulate Hoopa's power for their own benefit. After a while, certain objects that belonged to the organization mysteriously began to disappear. Everything from weapons and vehicles to money. It all began to vanish one by one. The organization got scared and decided to hole up inside of their headquarters. Once they did, things stopped disappearing, just like that. Relieved that it was finally over, the organization finally decided to step outside. It was then that they discovered their headquarters had been transported wholesale to somewhere in the middle of a desert. Terrified of what they had unleashed, the organization promptly disbanded. Looker might have been investigating that organization when he got caught up by Hoopa's mischief, but he showed up in Hoenn, not the middle of the desert. And just like the organization knew that those were their headquarters and what they had done, Looker would also have his memories. So it was not Hoopa. The next option is the most accepted one, an ultra wormhole. Annabelle is a good example of someone transported through one of these wormholes and someone that lost all of her memories. I understand why this is the most accepted theory, but I feel like it might not quite explain everything when it comes to Looker falling in Hoenn and also everything around their investigation of the Ultra Beasts. That's because there is one bit of information regarding Fallers that was kept hidden for a long time, even from Looker. Fallers attract Ultra Beasts. 10 years before the events of Sun and Moon, Looker was part of a team with Nanu and an unnamed Faller, which ended up with the latter losing her life. Annabelle in Alola fills the same role as this unnamed Faller. She attracts Ultra Beasts, meaning that Looker probably hasn't gone through an Ultra wormhole. Add to that during the whole investigation it also doesn't happen and we have calmed down the whole Ultra Space problem, it likely isn't what made him fall in Hoenn. So we need something that can take people from one place to the other and also make them lose their memories. Well, I've got just the thing. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, we saw this exact thing happening to Ingo. Ingo was moved from the future to the past and only had vague memories of who he was in present-day Unova. The battle subway boss was likely taken there because of his battle skills, which would have been helpful in teaching the people how to fend for themselves against the troubles to come. Or he was taken there because he got caught in a weird space-time distortion, like we saw many of them. The space-time distortion on top of Mount Coronet was caused by Giratina, but was stopped at the end of Pokemon Legends Arceus. However, other distortions still exist, meaning that they have other causes, there are different sources. So Looker might have been caught in one, and while he wasn't taken to Hisui, he got taken to somewhere else in the world. But considering that we haven't seen a single distortion randomly appearing in the Pokemon world ever since the days of, well, Pokemon Legends Arceus, it had to be something not random, something created on purpose. But who would do something like that could also be someone that Looker was investigating? Once again, all roads lead to Volo. Volo was referenced in ZA through his outfit, and it is heavily implied, if not outright confirmed, that he was the one that gave it away. This means that the man is either immortal or found a way to create those space-time distortions himself in order to move through the timeline. Something strange like this would certainly attract the attention of the international police, and they would certainly send their most valuable asset, Looker. In fact, we do know that Ingo returned, so Ingo might have warned them that something like that could happen. And so Looker, through his famous disguises, would do his best to catch and arrest Volo. But even if Looker is very good at battling, Volo is Volo, even without that double Giratina surprise. He would have been caught by the time-traveling villain and sent away somewhere else through one of his space-time distortions, which would not only cause him to lose his memories, but also thin the veil in between dimensions, causing dimensional rifts to appear in the sky of Hoenn, as Palkia, Dialga, and Giratina react to that very familiar power. And there you go, I believe Luker's last adventure was trying to catch and arrest Volo, but he got caught and got sent to the past. And I mean past because Gen 3 supposedly happens at the same time as Gen 1. And in Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon we have Red and Blue, but they're definitely older. So the Luker we see in Hoenn is the oldest Luker we've ever seen, but it just doesn't know who he is. But what about you? Do you have any theories for what happened to Luker, and would you like to see this character returning? Let me know in the comments down below. And now, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. But before I go, I want to thank my YouTube members Good Old Deo, Dash Plays, The Gavanator, and Attila Santo, and my Twitch subscribers and newbies here, the Dr. Joe, Teixeira23, Lazarix, and Odd Cypher for going the extra mile. Thank you so much for all of your support.